What would happen if the Spinosaurus and T-Rex ever got a hybrid? Today on the channel, we'll find just that out as we take a look at Tyrannotor, a hybrid built upon Herreranator and Isle St. Hubert's T-Rex to create a hybrid that could potentially wipe the floor with everything in the game. So stay tuned as we take a look at this monster's stats, abilities, combat profile, and finally bringing forth a verdict at the end of the analysis to show just how destructive this theropod can be. Stay tuned, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So I will say that Tyrannotor on paper has a pretty bad design. However, I will give them credit where it's due. They managed to make do with what they had on hand. Herreranator is already a pretty bad design, and then you got the Rebirth T-Rex, which is literally just a T-Rex, so you can't really do much with it. And given the materials they got, the source material, it's alright. It's not too bad. Very chunky though. It's a very bulky Rex, and I do quite like that. So the design itself is not bad. This is canonically, I guess, what you can call the first T-Rex Spinosaurus hybrid, so I definitely know what I'm going to be putting in the title and thumbnail. Anyway, Tyrannotor will be bringing 4,800 health, 1,700 attack, 119 speed, which is very quick for a Rex-like build, no armor, 40% crit, and a monstrous 150 critical damage. So, yeah, if that couldn't get any worse, it's also immune to reduced damage, which is really crazy and scary on something like this, especially with that high of an attack stat. I mean, Rebirth T-Rex was already borderline, like, top 3 material, and although it's kind of fallen a little bit, its hybrid getting this is very concerning. So, let's take a look at just exactly what Tyrannotor can do in Sector 2. Off rip, Tyrannotor will be bringing one of the best basic abilities in the game, that being Instant Distracting Feint. So, I mean, anyone who's used Rebirth Rex in the legendary formats, you don't need any introduction to this. You just spam this and you instantly kill Becklilith. Like, it's a pretty nutty ability. And then followed up, we've got Rebirth Distracting Roar, which is basically Rebirth Roar. However, now you're going to be getting a 50% affliction, and you're going to be distracting for 50%, which is very good. Pair that up with the no escape you have, and that affliction can become very useful. So I see a lot of benefits with this ability. It's also going to be bypassing armor and dodge, as well as all, group attacks, which is very needed at the moment because we've got Coelocephalus running around. For its third ability, you're going to be getting Instant Cunning Fierce Impact, which is basically Killer Instinct, but you remove all of their crit damage increases, and you reduce their damage for 50% while completely nullifying their crit chance and reducing that by 100%. So that's going to be on a cooldown of 2. Me personally, I probably would have gone with a cooldown of 1, but I'm not also complaining that's a cooldown of 2 just because you're going to be doing 90% crits on a 150 multiplier. So that's pretty fun. And then for our final ability, we've got Alert Rampaging Devastation. So on Secure, this is essentially a defense shattering Rampage. However, on Threatened, which is a 33% threshold, I do believe, that's going to be going up to a 2.5x, and you're going to be Devour Healing a lot, if I remember correctly. I will have to double check, but you're going to see in the clips anyway. And that's going to be on a cooldown of 1 and a delay of 1. And fun fact, this actually bypassed dodge, so it shouldn't bypass dodge anymore. However, that is going to change a lot of its matchups. And then for its final few abilities, you've got you've got Counter Ferocious Roar, and then you've got No Escape. So it's fixing essentially the problem Rebirth Rex ran into by being complete swap fodder, revenge kill bait. This thing, on the other hand, not so much, mainly because you're going to be having the Affliction, you're going to be having Cheat Death on, and then you've got No Escape. So you're in a pretty advantageous position against the meta. You might be asking, how good of a position? Well, let's find that out in Sector 3. So the intentions for Tyrannotor were a little weird just because they said they wanted to kill Baryotor and Chantrospinos, but then they also wanted to kill a lot of other stuff, but I mean, looking at this now, it can't really kill Baryotor. However, thankfully now it loses to Chantrospinos just because its stun resistance was 75%, now it's 50%, so now it's always guaranteed to get stunned by Chantrospinos, which is a good thing. The matchups I'm currently looking at now are still very subjective. However, what should be on screen should be final. What I'm looking at now, it has a guaranteed win against Atrimolistes. Me personally, I think this is a 50-50 depending on when you use Rebirth Roar and when they time their accelerating Berserk Decimation. Right now, I'm just kind of going off like projections because I haven't had time to make a list because I'm actually going on vacation soon, so I kind of want to get this voiceover done. You should be able to kill Mega Tyrannus. I think that's a little bit iffy too, just because you've got that nullifying Mega Pounce. It says here that you can kill Monkey on Dactylus and Spinotops. I personally beg to differ on the Monkey on Dactylus just because that stun chance is of course now been lowered. And then for your wins in like the 1/3 category, or aka 75%, you're going to be getting, creatures like Titanothulus, like Protolux, Beckel Jara, which I think is pretty weird, but I'll test that out myself. So again, if you see that on screen, congratulations, Titor. You also got Coelocephalus here, which is pretty shocking. Aquagnathus, Bariotor, Kentra Rex, and Beckelrisaurus. In the 75% as well, I do believe you kill Raja Dorixis as well, but that's dependent on if they don't crit you. So if they don't crit you, I believe you still win just because you out damage quite literally the Cautious Strike and Debilitating Nullification. Graganith is now a 50-50 because Skewer is a 100% chance to stun, and now its stun chance has been lowered. So if you do get the stun, you're in a pretty bad spot. And then Fukuitops just does what Fukuitops does. It force swaps the opponent, and you've got a Chorsa Maxima here, which if they crit you, then you die. In the 25% category, we've got Centralophus Lux, and then in like the absolute counters, we've got Chantra Spinos. So that's what I'm reading right now. It's very possible that on screen is going to be pretty different, so bear with me. So I hope that nothing was screwed over or nothing is too different. But if I had to make the projection, I would assume that Tyrannotor currently has pretty similar stats in terms of its matchups. So with that being said, we can head on over to Sector 4 to give this thing the review it deserves. Pulling up Tyrannotor now on the platform, I'm going to be giving this a 1.5 out of 5 in Synergy. It's very much a head-to-head creature, and speaking of which, I'll be giving it 4.5 out of 5 just because it's got so many ways to debilitate the opponent and buff itself up, as well as returning with a ton of output. I think it's very, very good. In the competitive side of things, again, it's a little too early to call. The kit is pretty basic in general terms, which is why I'm going to be giving it a 3.5 out of 5. But we shall see it once the meta progresses. Fun. I had quite a lot of fun with this. The damage you can do is quite insane. So for that reason, I'm giving it a subjective score of 4.5 out of 5. And then in flexibility, 3.5 out of 5, just because I think this isn't going to be something you are absolutely going to want. But for teams that are higher end in the ladder, it's going to be a fun pick. It's definitely not one of those creatures that's mid, but it's definitely not the best either, if that makes sense. So think of it as like the lowest of the low end on high Tyrant, whilst technically not being mid Tyrant. It is, but it's just doing so many things that you can't really call it that. I hope that makes sense. Technically speaking, it's not a mid Tyrant, but it's not a high Tyrant as well. So it's a weird placement. And then in the adjustment likelihood, I'll be giving it 2.5 out of 5 just because they've already adjusted it pre-release. And then in terms of a boost profile, I'll be giving it 1027, which gives you 9,900 health, 4,200 attack, and 135 speed. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is now the Tyrant Lizard King done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know down below what you think of Tyrannotor, if you're going to be able to unlock it, and if you're going to use it. Sit back, relax, good luck on ladder, and enjoy the carnage.